The next section you'll need to have in your proposal is called the methodology. And the methodology may sound like a big fancy word, but the only thing a methodology is it's asking you, how are you going to complete this research? So it just wants to know, what's your strategy for conducting an investigation in order to answer your research question? Now, the chart I have here for you actually shows you all the different kinds of ways that you can actually get this research and start forming an understanding of the issue so that you can write your research paper. You'll see that a lot of the ones that you see here on this chart are actually primary research. Primary research, in a nutshell, means it's the kind of information that you have gotten for yourself. It isn't that someone else got the data for you and that they've interpreted the data and they're telling you, because that's what sources do. If you have an expert or a scholar that wrote a paper on the criminalization of poor people in urban areas. Well, that article has probably gotten some data from somewhere else, and the authors have interpreted that data and they've given their opinion about the criminalization of poor people in those areas. That's secondary information. You want primary information. And these methods on this chart are some of the ways that you can get primary information. So you can do interviews. An interview, of course, means that you're setting up a meeting with you and another person, and you're going to talk in depth about that person's experience. In depth is very important. The interview is what separates itself from, or the in-depth nature of it separates the interview from a questionnaire or a survey, for instance. So in an interview, you'll ask a lot of follow-up questions about that person's experience. You're going to get longer answers in an interview, and you'll probably get more varied answers in an interview. So interviews are very important as primary research because you can get deep material from individuals. In a survey, on the other hand, you're trying to get responses from as many people as possible because you want to see a sample of what people know. So instead of going up and down as an interview will go deeper, surveys and questionnaires tend to go horizontally because we want to see what the responses are from a lot of people about a lot of questions. And the questions don't tend to go as deeply as the interview questions go. And you guys have had some experience collecting survey questions because you've gone out and done a couple of surveys just on campus, really informal ones. There are also observations. Now, in an observation, what you're doing is you're not actually talking to anyone at this point. You want to see a process or an act happen. So, for instance, if you are looking at the criminalization of the poor in Ferguson, Missouri, what you might do is travel to Ferguson and hang out at a spot where you know a lot of people get speeding tickets. And you just hang out there for 3 or 4 days, perhaps, and you're just watching. You're watching as the cops pull people over and give them speeding tickets, and you're going to notice certain things about that process. So you'll notice things like what's the race or the gender, if you can get any cues about the economic status of the person who's being pulled over. Are they in an old beat up car? Does it look like, or did they sound like they told you where they worked or how much they made? No matter what it is, you're going to try and stay out of the situation as much as you can and just view it. Once you become a part of that situation, you could change it. And so this is a tricky area for researchers. Observation means you need to be kind of disconnected from what's going on while still looking in and seeing what's going on. Focus groups, that's another way of collecting information, of collecting data for your research. Focus groups are a little different. They're a cross between something like interviews and surveys, actually, in terms of the number of people you'll question and the kinds of questions you'll ask. A focus group, you usually have a few people, 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 people, but you're actually going to sit down with them and you're going to ask them some questions. And some of the questions you'll drill down pretty deeply on. You want to find more information, but you want to find it from a group of people instead of just one person at a time. And focus groups are really good when you're trying to find out certain attitudes, perhaps, that a group of people will have as opposed to just one person. For instance, I did research a few years ago about Somali women, Somali Muslim women who were students at a college I was teaching. And I was trying to find out more information from this group of women about their experiences at our college. And I tried to figure out some of the cultural challenges that they have being students at this college. Interviewing them as a group was really good for me because I got to hear a lot about the culture and I got to hear in that one meeting how many experiences these women shared, as opposed to going one at a time, doing individual interviews. And sometimes the questions in the group are much more interesting, the ones that they ask each other are much more interesting than the ones that I came up with for the focus group. This is another good reason to have a focus group as part of your research. Case studies are another way for a person to find out what's going on by looking at information that's been collected but not interpreted. So, for instance, in Ferguson, we know that recently there was a Department of Justice report that was released. And in that Department of Justice report, there are certain pieces of data and certain people that they've actually profiled in the report because they actually collected information about these individuals to give people a bigger idea of what's going on in the city of Ferguson. Those things that are inside of the Department of Justice report would be considered case studies. So we could look at what's going on in individual cases, and then you can extrapolate, which means pull out information from that and create some sort of interpretation of your own about what's going on. The last area we have here in the methodology chart would be document reviews. Document reviews are when you find first-hand documents. That means documents that have not already been interpreted and given to you. So if you found an article about the Declaration of Independence, that's different from your actually reading the Declaration of Independence for yourself, right? That's the difference. So you want to have a lot of first-hand accounts, and those documents that have been written, the actual things, the actual pieces of data that have been written and not interpreted are really good pieces of information because you can go and look at those documents and you may find something that another scholar has not found, and you can talk about the information you found directly in that document. So document reviews are another really great way of finding out information and using that information to support the argument you're trying to make.